Today in the show we have Crowdstrike and Decentralization, Slovenia issuance of a tokenized bond via BNP Paribas, the Blockchain World Festival summary, and much more. I'm your host, Mauricio Magaldi, and this is Block Drops, your weekly digest on blockchain for business. These news are not a form of endorsement, sponsorship, or encouragement for consumption and are meant for educational purposes only. In the first drop today, we're going to talk a little bit about the Crowdstrike incident. Once the Crowdstrike / Microsoft blue screen of death happened, many articles popped up talking about how a decentralized future or a decentralized solution would play a better part because blockchains could prevent this from happening because it's not a centralized system, so on and so forth. So instead of a single link to this drop, you'll see 3 different links and with 3 different, sometimes complementary, sometimes opposing views on the same subject. So Robert Knight from Cointelegraph has an article called How Decentralization Could Have Prevented the Global Microsoft Meltdown. And then it goes on to interview Zane Chang, who's the CTO of Horizon Labs. And they have very good considerations about single point of failure, how centralized companies are, their trust in centralized companies has been eroded, and Bitcoin introducing decentralization as a potential solution to centralized systems. United Ventures has an article. It's titled "A Wake-Up Call for a Decentralized Future." They go on explaining what happened with CrowdStrike and how there is a tension between centralization, decentralization, bundling, unbundling, progress in society and technology, and how the pendulum swings back and forth, and how the edge is being a target closer to the user, including edge computing, and explain Mainstream, which is a decentralized streaming solution, Axine, which is doing cybersecurity in a decentralized way, and Avane ID with data security and data governance in giving that back to the users. And then there's an article by Aphone on LinkedIn titled "Will DPIN Save the Biggest Global IT Outage in History Caused by Microsoft CrowdStrike Issues?" Pretty catchy title. DPIN, we talked about DPIN here before, is a decentralized physical infrastructure networks. And the article goes on explaining what happened with CrowdStrike when they pushed an update, and then that being so close to the kernel in Windows computers pretty much resulted in the blue screen of death. And this impacted millions and millions of computers. According to other articles, CrowdStrike is 24% of the market share in that category, which means that they are very widespread, and this is certainly cause for concern in such a mission critical industry and component. Aphone continues highlighting the weaknesses in centralized systems and how they tend to converge to a single point of failure. And then a solution would be to move away from centralized systems using DPIN, leveraging decentralization of multiple nodes, pushing computing to the edges, so processing data closer to the source instead of centralized, and creating redundancy with multiple paths to update such systems. So pretty wide considerations, and I think what we can learn is that yes, outages are more common in centralized single point of failure systems, but as an industry, we need to think whether blockchains are already at this stage primed for mission critical systems. Most of the implementations over the last, 8 years that I've been directly working with blockchains have been not necessarily critical systems. There's always a fallback plan. Even if they are Web3 companies, they have different ways of handling this. And even if they are Web3 companies, they are not critical, mission critical for a whole industry of billions of people that depend on them. So I think the homework here for us in blockchain is, can we step up the game and create blockchains that really serve that mission critical purpose? In the second drop today, we're covering a new digital bond that was issued on the blockchain. This time is a first of its kind in Europe. It's a sovereign bond issued by the government of Slovenia. It's a 30 million euro short dated digital bond, and they used Neobonds, the tokenization platform from BNP Paribas. They were settled, the purchase of these bonds were settled using the wholesale CBDC issued by the French Central Bank, and is part of the pilot trials of the Eurosystem settlement pilot. It's a wholesale DLT pilot. This is the first of a kind in Europe because no other bond was issued by a sovereign government on the chain yet. So it's significant progress. There were other bonds issued specifically by the European Investment Bank, which we covered here. They issued a bunch of digital bonds, but this is a private bank owned by member states in the EU. So it's not exactly a sovereign bond. It's still something that we hadn't seen in Europe yet. The bank, BNP Paribas, acted as the global coordinator, book runner, and issuer with support of Clifford Chance on the legal side. BNP Paribas is no stranger to tokenization. Since 2022, they've been running Asset Foundry, which we also covered here on the show before, and they've done mostly on Ethereum, and they've done bond issuances and ECB participation in the trials as well. So they absolutely are in the tokenization space. Although Asset Foundry doesn't settle on chain, they use RTGS like systems to do so. Neobonds, on the other hand, is based on the Canton blockchain, which we covered recently, and their smart contracts are programmed using Demo, the digital asset markup language, to code the smart contracts. In this particular process, they record the ownership of the bonds on chain, while the smart contracts calculate and generate the coupon payments in every other life cycle event. And that includes the redemption in November 25th this year, as it converges to the Eurosystem settlement trials wrapping up. So this, again, major bank deep into RWA tokenization and now doing on-chain settlement, even though it's a CBDC, which we all have a kind of a bias here on the show, but it's a wholesale CBDC, so I think this is progress. And in the third drop, we'll do a little bit of a summary about Blockchain Rio Festival, probably the most significant Web3 blockchain related event in Latin America, if not the largest. This was the third year of the event. The numbers are adding up. They had 300 plus speakers across 9 stages. It's a large event. There were different booths from different participants, different segments on the sector. We saw layer ones, layer twos, foundations. We saw exchanges of many kinds, startups of many kinds, the obvious infrastructure providers, developers, and builders of all sorts, and pretty interesting collection of people. I think the big focus of my attention was a midnight booth, because we were there with a midnight booth and we had great attraction. People were interested in the swag, obviously, but also interested in where we are with the project and what the project is going to be and when it's going to launch and all those questions. And it was very interesting. I was very impressed with the newcomers I think 80% of the people I spoke with that were new to me were new to crypto. So it's a pretty significant mark on the event's record to attract newcomers to this industry. Usually Web3 events are just ridden with people that are in the industry for a very long time, so you kind of end up preaching to the choir. The event started with the keynote by the governor of the Brazilian Central Bank, Roberto Campos Neto, and it was pretty much focused on the DREX pilot, where the pilot is now, what are the challenges, and what the pilot's going to do next. And that was probably the most crowded the main stage was. And by and large, with everyone I spoke with that operates in Brazil, they are relying on DREX as a big enabler for blockchain adoption in the country, which is great in one way, but it also concerning on another, because we're just looking into a centralized entity trying to play both regulator and infrastructure play, and we don't know what that looks like down the line. So something for us to pay attention to. I was very fortunate to do a keynote on Thursday about midnight explaining data protection applications and how they're better than regular dApps. And I also took part on a panel with the Cardano Foundation and Petrobras, where we discussed the importance of corporate education in fostering adoption of enterprises when it comes to blockchain. The final panel, or the final keynote of the event, was by Charles Hoskinson, co-founder of Ethereum, founder of Cardano, and founder of Midnight. It was a arc of history between where we started and where we are now, and what we need to do to push the industry forward with fourth generation blockchains and meta chains, which is a very unique concept that I learned as he wrapped up the event. So congratulations to Francisco, Nathan, and Thales on the success of the event, and very thankful for the people who swung by the booth for Midnight to talk about Midnight and to also shoot a shielded selfie. Yes, we had a shield at the booth and people took selfies and it went crazy. So thank you so much and see you next year. And in a week packed full of news, here is more. Itaú, Laqus, OT, Liqi, and VBSO tokenize commercial notes in a model that dispenses crowdfunding. Web3 infrastructure company Crossmint acquired Cycle AI to start converging blockchain and artificial intelligence. The Central Bank of Brazil expects 16 more use cases in the next stage of the DREX pilot. DUX launches influencer IPO and receivables for content creators. Flowchain will be the new blockchain from the Flow Group. It will run on Polkadot with infrastructure by Tanssi. Mercado Bitcoin launches a new token for RWA that will pay the profit of 15% associated to the operations of the Rappi application in Brazil. There's a new Cardano node 9.1.0 that's now available for SPOs to upgrade. The total SPOs on version 9 Plus is now 37%, and the chain hard fork will kick in when they reach 70% adoption. And the first stablecoins have been minted on the M0 network by Moxon. It's 10 million M tokens. Catch us online. We're on Instagram at BlockDrops Podcast, on Twitter at BlockDropsPod or 0x Mauricio. We're on Lens at blockdrops.lens. We have a newsletter on LinkedIn. Write to us at blockdropspodcast@gmail.com, and you can listen to the BlockDrops Podcast at Spotify, iColab, Faberbun Tech, and all of the other major streaming platforms. Shoutouts today to the people who share the links you will find in the episode notes. Ricardo Paixão, Rodrigo Fernandes Toza, Francisco Carvalho, Thales Aguiar, Natan Valadares, and the whole team at the Blockchain Rio Festival, Cláudia Mancini, Leonardo Cavalcanti, Thiago Rudiger, Luiz Otávio, Cássio Gusson, Bruno Diniz, Kate Tolley, and Luca Prosperi. Don't forget to leave the ratings on your favorite player. This is all for today. Stay rare, stay weird. LFG.